So this is from the November 21st City Council meeting. We had a final plat approval for Bodel Farms subdivision. You saw that one already. And then we had the reconsideration of the Parker Estates subdivision. This is the one off of Greenhurst near Albertsons. They requested reconsideration because the city council put some requirements on there that did not allow for a certain number of rentals in the subdivision. So a certain percentage of the homes could be rented, and that they would require that be incorporated into the HOA CCNRs. That was challenged legally. Our attorney said that's probably not a good idea, and so they reversed course and approved it without that condition on there. The next one was the home occupation CUP for the automotive and truck repair business across from Skyview High School that you considered. You approved the CUP, and the council considered it and reversed that motion so that they denied the CUP. Part of the reason is that the applicant moved from that location. And yeah, they bought a home, and just a reminder, and we did a great job in this case. We said, don't take any action on it until you've had the appeal period. In this case, he went out and bought a house in the appeal period, and then the appeal happened, and council denied the CUP because of it, partly because of him moving, because our code doesn't allow home occupation for anywhere but where you live.
So he was trying to keep it at that location and live somewhere else. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, it was planned, because you don't just go buy a house within a week.
No.
Yes, you could.
It was his mom's house.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, and then there were quite a few comments from the public about concerns about the appearance. As you saw some of the slides, but then we had quite a bit of public testimony against it in written form, and then we had some people show up in opposition to it. So, so they didn't approve that CUP.
One question about that, Rodney. So
Yeah.
if the CUP is not granted, obviously, what if he just continues to operate? Then what
Yeah.
does the city do at that
We've
point?
already had that question. So there's, first of all, we send code compliance out there. That's what their job is, to notify them, to cite them. If they still don't act, we don't have a fee or anything associated with a land use that's inappropriate. And so what we have to do is go through a legal suit against them. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they just comply. But I understand they were operating a business already. There were some things on the website, on Facebook and everything about their business running. So we found that out as well. They just didn't know, I guess, to come in and get that CUP. So, all right. So the next one is a variance, a 20-foot setback variance. This is just for your information. Karcher Road is being expanded by ITD, and so what that's doing is it's making it difficult for any of these businesses that are already existing to expand their structure, to have the parking in place where it currently is. So what's happening is we're going to get another one of these, and maybe some more. They're just coming in for a variance of that setback from the right-of-way. The next one is a variance for a sign that it's off of Fargo Avenue, and they wanted to go, I think they wanted 90 feet, or 85 feet, sorry, 85 feet high and a little bit larger sign. Council approved it, but with the condition that it go down to 70 feet, which is consistent with other variances they've approved. in the recent past. And then they directed staff to come back with some code changes to allow for larger and higher signs near the freeway. So we're trying to come up with that language right now we're not really sure the distance yet from the freeway, but we're working on that language right now. So you'll see that in a code change in the future. And then the last one is the Clear Creek subdivision, and this was off of Middleton Road. And this one had quite a bit of mixed use for this project. There was some townhomes and some apartments, fourplexes, and then some single-family homes. There was quite a bit of diversity in this development. And you recommended it, City Council, they denied it, and the applicant has requested that it be reconsidered. So, and this is probably good training for all of us. Some of the decorum that was happening by the audience in the meeting. There was cheering and clapping allowed throughout the meeting. So as council members would make a choice on what direction they're going to go, there was cheering for that certain choice. So the argument against this and the argument for reconsideration is that they're intimidated. They're intimidating the council members through their cheering and clapping for a certain direction. This should be a discussion between you, not between you and the public at all. And so that was the argument. We will see what happens on December 5th. That will go before City Council. But there was quite a few things that happened in that meeting. Was pretty lively, and so we just need to remember that we need to keep it as calm as possible, but also as professional as can be. And I think we do a great job in this group. So those are all the items.
Okay, no staff communication.
Nope.
All right, thank you.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda in the minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Okay, and we are at 6:05, so we can go ahead and start public hearings. We have, the first item is a subdivision short plat approval for Broadstone Townhome subdivision. Do we have the applicant? Come on up.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Stephanie Hopkins with KM Engineering, thank you. 5725 North Discovery Way in Boise. I'm here representing Hawkins Companies, who's the developer on this project. And I do have a presentation that I think Parker is probably pulling up. So we are before you tonight asking for a couple of things for a project that's already been approved through design review and is currently under construction. Broadstone Townhomes is located just west of Fern Street and north of Colorado Avenue. It's about 2.8 acres and previously was rezoned last year to the RMH district, which is a multifamily district, and then received design review as approval as well last year for 6 multifamily buildings and 52 units. So we're requesting tonight a short plat for 5 building lots and 2 waiver requests related to the subdivision ordinance. So one is for, one is for landscape buffer requirement and the other is for building setback requirement. And that is in relation to the way that the lot lines are drawn, which is kind of around the buildings, the way that they were configured with the approved plans. For some reason, it's not letting me. Okay. I was trying to jiggle the batteries thinking that was, okay. So, And this is the location, we kind of already talked about it. It's super close to Northwest Nazarene. It's a nice infill project, really close to a lot of things. It'll be within walking distance for future residents as well as existing services. And this is the approved landscape plan. It shows about 20 feet of landscaping along Colorado Avenue, which is in accordance with the multifamily ordinance. So it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize this before starting this project, but the subdivision ordinance and the multifamily ordinance in NAMPA's code doesn't really talk to one another. There's a little bit of a difference on what's required for subdivisions compared to multifamily developments. So this came through and met all of the ordinance requirements. We didn't ask for any waivers or variances. The landscaping was designed in accord with code requirements, and there were actually quite a few amenities included that were in excess of code requirements as well. So interestingly enough, the lot lines that we're now requesting were present previously on the property, and we actually did a lot consolidation, I think it was last year, under the premise that we didn't realize that we wanted to have separate lots, basically. So we could have probably gone through this process administratively, but because we consolidated those lots, we're now coming to you to ask for a short plat to put 5 of the buildings on, well, there's 6 buildings technically, but to make 5 lots for these 6 buildings. So these are the elevations for the buildings that are currently being constructed. And this is the short plat. So as I mentioned, we'll have 5 lots. They're in excess of what the code requires for this zone. There's going to be cross-access easements, and as you can see, there's kind of an easement through the center of the site as well as to Elder Street. And there will be agreements that'll be reached for each of these parcels to make sure that folks can enter and exit, and things will be maintained between each of the lots. This is the site plan just with the lot lines shown clearly, so you can kind of see how they configure with the buildings. For the most part, we're meeting all the setback requirements and all the landscape buffer requirements. There's just a couple of exceptions that I'll mention in a few minutes. Oh, and as I mentioned too, there were quite a few amenities that were proposed with this project. Seating, barbecue facilities, children's play structure, bike racks, and internal pathway system. All of those would be accessible and available to residents, even though these will be on individual lots. So a big component of this project and concerns that were raised by neighbors and heard by the developer was maintenance of this property if it were to be developed on or put onto separate lots. And so I'll talk about kind of how that's going to be structured and what the plan is there. This is just a landscape open space exhibit that was approved to show you how much open space is being provided. And so the waiver request that we are proposing and asking for tonight is a 10.5-foot buffer to Bird Avenue, which is designated a local street. Typically, they require 15 feet of landscaping along this street for the subdivision ordinance. With the multifamily ordinance, it actually complies with the requirement. To Fern Street, we have about 11 feet proposed, and typically 15 feet is required. And then 25 feet is normally required along Colorado Avenue, which is an arterial roadway, and we're showing 22 feet for the majority of the buffer. There are a couple of areas where it exceeds that and meets the code requirements as well. So although the specific layout of this project has not changed, the requested number of lots has impacted code sections specific to the subdivision ordinance, as I mentioned. The project's currently under construction, and the developer would like to utilize the approved site plan. So we're requesting these 2 waivers to really accommodate that request while allowing them the flexibility to have separate lots for the buildings. The second request that we have is setbacks for the front of the building on the far west side and the southernmost building. So normally there would need to be 15 feet on each side of the property line for the front setback and then the side setback according to the building height. In this case, the way that it was approved as a multifamily development on one lot, it was meeting code requirements, but with the subdivision ordinance, it's no longer meeting that requirement. So we're asking for a little bit of flexibility and an approval of a waiver there. So as I mentioned, maintenance is going to be super important for this development. Neighbors, I think there were probably 5 or 6 neighbors in attendance at the neighborhood meeting, and they were pretty adamant about making sure that this was really addressed and well taken care of to make sure the development was maintained and that they were able to get a hold of folks if they needed to have things taken care of. So Hawkins has really worked hard to make sure that they're developing what is called a Common Area Maintenance Agreement, or a CAMA, and declarations that'll be used to maintain and I guess police this project in a way that'll make it really easy to enforce. So let's see. The declarations are going to ensure that the maintenance director has guidelines. This is an example of the types of things that'll be under that maintenance agreement. So common areas defined, of course, as areas that each lot is able to use from time to time, and it's not used by a building or other structure. The maintenance director is going to be required to maintain, repair the seal coating and resurfacing when necessary of all paved surfaces, remove snow, debris, filth, and other refuse from the site, maintain, repair, and replace any artificial lighting facilities or any common lighting facilities, and maintain all landscaped area and replace shrubs, trees, and other items if needed to make sure that we're complying with the code. And then maintain, repair, and replace, when necessary, the automatic sprinkler system. So this is just an example of the types of things that would be included in that agreement. They would obviously add more things and make sure that it was covering all the specifics of this project, especially if you all felt that it was necessary to add something to cover the neighbors' concerns. We will work with staff further as we go through this process to provide them any documentation that they need, if it's a condition of approval or if there's anything in the development agreement that is needed for this part of the project. So yeah, I think this is obviously a project that's going to provide a needed resource for this part of town. It'll provide housing. It's already under construction, so you've all had the chance to review the plans and all the elevations, and I think, aside from the fact that we're asking for a couple of waivers, this is really not going to impact the way that this project functions, outside of needing a couple more agreements to make sure that maintenance is taken care of in the way that Hawkins wants as well as the city wants. So I do have a person from the development team here tonight too, and he might be able to answer any questions about the CAMA or project specifics that I might not know the answer to, but I'm happy to stand for questions.
I have a question for you, please.
Sure.
Along Colorado, is there anything between Colorado and the buildings themselves that keeps people or children from wandering out into the street and getting hit by a car?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kehoe, I do not remember off the top of my head, so I'm going to look at the landscape plan really quick. I am sure that there's some kind of fencing, though. Yeah, there is. It looks like 4-foot wrought iron is planned. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
may have questions later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'll make this as simple as it needs to be. This project was approved previously. This is simply going back and subdividing so that each building is on its own lot. Where that happens, where it's built, and then you go back and subdivide, it creates some issues. They're asking for a couple waivers to work with those issues, which will eventually go before City Council as a business item to be approved, but pending your approval as well. So we looked at the elevations already. These are already being built, so that's not necessarily what's being asked today. It's RMH zone property. There's extensive history on this. We can just jump down to the latest in the past year. This body approved the zoning map amendment. The City Council denied the rezone request from RS6 to RMH. And then City Council again reconsidered the request and approved. to RMH without a variance request to parking. And design review approved the architectural plans in August of last year. Couple things to point out as far as the applicable regulations. The one to point out is the setback requirement. You can see it's in bold there. For every 10 feet in height over which a structure exceeds 30 feet, the structure shall be set back an additional 5 feet from the side lot lines. So the standard is 8 feet, and then every foot, in excess of 30 feet is an additional 5 feet. So every 10 feet over 30 feet is an additional 5. So this building exceeds, I believe it's 31 feet, so they would be required to be 13 feet from the property line. They're asking for a waiver to that requirement. Correspondence, a lot of this has been taken care of already with the building permit. Doug Critchfield, the Planning and Zoning Department, submitted comments regarding the landscape buffer requirements and the insufficiency there, which is the second waiver requirement. This is in the staff report showing those deficiencies. Again, these are the issues that occur when you approve a project and then go back and subdivide it. We've seen these already. Regarding the lot sizes, the minimum is 6,000 for the first two and 500 for additional units. So the proposed lot sizes are sufficient as far as the code. The lot sizes are appropriate. Lot widths are appropriate as well, and the qualified open space required. The short plats are exempt from that. Qualified open space. They provide sufficient open space for the multifamily requirement, which has already been approved. And the parking was approved under our previous code requirement, which was 2 per dwelling unit. So that requirement is met. And density is 42.98, which is within range for the RMH zoning. The staff finds that the plat is compliant in regards to lot size. The 2 waivers would be what would be considered what is being asked to be waived is the setbacks and the landscaping. The amenities provided, I'm not sure we necessarily need to get into it, but the barbecue area, children's play facility, play structure, bike racks, and internal pathway system. Again, the requirement for the setback is 13 feet. They provide 10.5 from one side and 11.3 from the other side. The conditions of approval are in the staff report. There is a potential motion for you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Parker? Okay, we'll go to public hearing. Do we have a sign-up sheet? Daniel, pretty please. We'll forgive you
This time.
this time. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with, for the proposal, we have JJ Garcia, who just wants to be on the record as for and does not wish to speak. Stephanie Hopkins would like to speak. Oh, that's you. That's right. So you've already done your speaking. So, all right, then we have against Mary Ann Beck. Come on down. Make sure and give us your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to tell us what you're going to tell us.
Excuse me, Mary Ann Beck, 912 East Bird. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. You have received a letter from Fred and Mary Jane Burton regarding their viewpoint in opposition to this proposal. I agree with everything they said and also oppose this proposal at the present time. When we had the neighborhood meeting the day after Labor Day, I asked 2 questions. Since neither was fully answered, I thought I would ask them again. The first question I asked was, how does this proposed change benefit the neighborhood? My question wasn't answered. After thinking about it, the only reason I can come up with it is that it doesn't benefit the neighborhood. The second question came as a result of a statement that was made, made at the meeting. The individual stated that there were no current plans to sell any of the buildings, but that was the reason why they were asking for the plat. So I asked if there wasn't any plans to sell any of the buildings, why then were they going through the time, energy, and expense to come before the city? The response was that Hawkins had not shared that with them. I can come up with 2 reasons for the proposed change. There is a plan in works, but Hawkins, the owners, and KM Engineering don't want the city or the neighborhood to know what those plans are and who may want to buy the buildings. Or 2, there is no current plan, but that the parties want the proposal approved up front, so when they want to sell, they can sell to whomever they want without prior consultation, input, and approval from the city or the neighborhood. I would appreciate it if any individual asking for this proposed change would provide any additional feedback or response to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question for you, please.
Yes.
Give me an example of what would enhance the neighborhood. What would be good for the neighborhood? You said there's nothing good about this in the neighborhood.
No, what I'm saying is,
What would be good?
what I am saying is I asked the question how this change would be a benefit to the neighborhood, and there was no response. I think that, my second question, the fact that they can sell the building to whoever they want is an issue. Also, the maintenance issue.
That was addressed by the applicant.
I understand that, but I also know that homeowners associations don't always work real well. And that's what we were told, is that it would be part of a homeowners association.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, we have Mary Jane Burton that would like to speak, and then Fred Burton, who is on the record as against but does not want to speak.
Thank you. Mary Jane Burton, 819 South Elder Street, Nampa. I'm speaking in opposition to the Broadstone Townhome project being subdivided and therefore to the requested waivers. When the Broadstone project was proposed, we, the city and the neighbors, were assured that the Hawkins Company wanted to build and operate a quality operation. Note, 1 quality apartment complex and 1 quality management company. We must now question the sincerity of that. The possibility of 5 different owners, some of whom could very well be non-residents of Nampa or even of Idaho, working together to make this a quality complex is not good. The HOA only works if the owners care, and when you multiply the if by 5, it becomes very problematic. The picture on the first page of the narrative, and it was the first picture that was shown, shows the site as it was being prepped for building. No concrete was poured. At that point, plans could have been modified so that there would be no need to ask for the waivers. So the question is, when did Hawkins and the families who own the project decide it would be a good idea to subdivide? Is this a case of bait and switch, just of poor foresight, or is it a way to make a lot of money selling the buildings off piecemeal? I don't know, but I do ask you to vote no to this waiver request.
Thank you. Okay, and then finally, we have Bonnie Garris, who is against but does not wish to speak. Is there anybody else present that would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this proposal? Okay, let's have you come on back up here, Stephanie. And
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Stephanie Hopkins, 5725 North Discovery Way, Boise 83713. Appreciate the neighbors' feedback, and I remember meeting Mary Ann. I don't think I had the chance to meet Mary Jane at the meeting, And I apologize if I wasn't informative enough with some of my answers. Sometimes we don't have all the answers when we're at those types of meetings because it's kind of in the first stages of things. But let's see, I think, so the decision to subdivide was a little bit late in the game in relation to Mary Jane's comment. It was, as I mentioned, an oversight on our part. It was, this property was actually initially already subdivided. I think it had about 5 lots, which would have met Hawkins' intentions now at the time. So we could have really kind of adjusted those lines to accommodate the buildings administratively, and we wouldn't be before you tonight asking for waivers in a short plat. So that it was not their intention to bait and switch or provide something and then come back later and ask for forgiveness. This is really just kind of to clean things up and to make sure it's going to meet their intentions with ownership, which Ethan Mansfield is here tonight with Hawkins, and I'll have him kind of come up and speak to what Hawkins' intention is with ownership and why they're subdividing in the first place. I don't think I covered that well with my presentation, so I'll have him come up and touch on that.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Ethan Mansfield, representing Hawkins Companies. We're at 855 West Broad Street in Boise, Idaho. Yeah, so as Stephanie touched on, I'd just like to talk a little bit about why we're here before you with the subdivision. It was truly an oversight. We're asking now to rectify that, and it does include these waivers. But had we done the original property line adjustment, it would not have needed any waivers. I do want to restate that we don't have any intentions to sell this property. This property is, we would like this property to be owned in jointly between several families, including a Hawkins entity. To do this, we felt it would be simpler to simply have separate lots for each owner. They'll be owned in a trust. It's generally the intention is to be able to have that flexibility to pass those parcels on within a family, not to sell them. Now, we completely understand the concern that they may be sold. One of the family members may decide to sell. Most buyers would not buy a single parcel of a multifamily project. That's relatively uncommon, but because we understand that could technically be possible, we've put together a CAMA, Common Area Maintenance Agreement, as well as a host of other agreements, including an access agreement across all 5 parcels to ensure consistency of management, even if there were to be separate owners. So the statement that was made about separate management companies is not exactly correct because there would be a single management entity that would administer the Common Area Management Agreement. So I think that's a relatively important piece to understand. And I think in addition, if there's any concern about certain owners kind of preventing access to certain pieces of the development, that's all handled through an access agreement that's kind of blanket across all 5 parcels. So I guess between the CAMA and the access agreement, all of those issues should be taken care of. As far as how it benefits the community, Hawkins as an owner takes pride in their developments, and we strive to provide first-class, first-rate rental properties. If this property were sold, which we don't have plans to, but again, it's going into a trust for family members, we feel that actually having accountable owners, all accountable to a Common Area Management Agreement, which would not be in place if it were under one entity, actually strengthens the ability for it to, or the kind of the maintenance obligations and the obligations of the owners and manager to keep it first class, first rate. Because, for example, if the property were to fall under disrepair under one owner, right, it would be a code compliance call to the city from a neighbor. If the owner was, if under 5 or 1 or 2 or 3 separate owners, if one of them were to eschew their maintenance obligations, the other owners would have a legal obligation and a right to address that before a code compliance case was made. So it actually almost strengthens the ability to enforce high standards of maintenance, if that makes sense. So thank you very much.
Couple of questions before, before you leave. I've heard the term a couple of times, one from you, that this was an oversight. It seems like a pretty big oversight to me, though. Were the trusts in place in the development stage of this project?
That is a good question. The trusts were, to my knowledge, not in place at the time, at the inception. So this was conceived of after the development was already kind of underway. In retrospect, to maintain flexibility, we should have kept the number of lots that we had initially.
Right, but at the time, what you're telling me is that you didn't have the trust in place, so that's why you didn't consider separate lots.
That's fair to say, Commissioner Kirkham.
So now the trusts are in place. This is primarily why you want to divide this into 5 different lots, so that potentially down the road, those individual lots in the building would therefore pass into the trust. Supposedly, that's the.
Commissioner Kirkman, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Drew.
I can't remember if it was you or Stephanie that said it, but you mentioned that if you had just done the lot line adjustments, none of these waivers would be required. Can you elaborate on why these setbacks and landscape buffers wouldn't have to be required?
Commissioner Morgan, yeah, I certainly can. So in short, I'll let Stephanie kind of dive into the details of this particular piece, but in short, what it is this application meets all of the setback requirements of the RMH zone. It does not meet buffer requirements of a subdivision. And so due to the subdivision piece of it, that has thrown us into the necessity to request waivers.
I got a quick one. It might have been in there and I missed it, but in your management agreement, is it going to be part of the documents that are on file with the county that all 5 properties will have to be managed under the same management company? And so if it does end up being sold, then one owner can't have their own management company while the other, so all of them will have to continue to be managed under the same property management company.
Commissioner Turner, that is correct.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a quick question for staff, and it just goes to the code, the subdivision code and the short plat code, I believe, or the RMH. Are those in conflict with each other in this? Because it was brought up that they were, but is that the case?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, there are things that would apply to subdivisions that don't apply to a regular multifamily project. So one thing that is required with subdivisions that wouldn't normally is a landscape buffer in excess of, with a subdivision, it's 25 feet versus 15 feet for a regular product. They would still have to apply the same setback requirements if they kept the original lot lines.
So they're
Those
not
would-
necessarily in conflict with each other, except in this extenuating circumstances is when they become that, that's the waiver.
Right.
Okay, I
There's,
just wanna
there,
make sure the
there
codes
could be
were-
issues with density. There can be issues with density being the big one. So if they come in and subdivide, then there have to be a certain number of units on a certain number of lots, and it gets into a whole other issue. And in addition to building code requirements as well, when they put a lot line next to a building, they have to build a certain way. So there's extra requirements that come in.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? I'd entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
I'll start. No one else will, but I'll appreciate everybody else's thoughts. I believe that the applicant is sincere, that this was an oversight, and they want to fix it and clean it up. I'm concerned about the precedent that that sets. That, I don't, that speaks for itself. The precedent that it might set to be able to modify things after the approval.
And I'll chime in. I kind of agree with you. As far as precedent, though, I mean, you guys know how we look at things. It's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Everything is. And honestly, as far as aesthetics and everything else, it's not going to change anything. And I like the agreement. I think we should include that as part of our motion if we so move that way. But I just don't think that anybody's going to really notice any difference, one lot or five, visually or any way else.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Miller. I mean, who's going to go out there with a tape measure and measure the 5-foot difference in the variance? But I don't necessarily agree with the oversight part. And that's kind of what's bothering me, is that this was a big project to begin with, and that's a big oversight to not have, and not faulting anybody for that. And it, you know, could have been. We don't know what the future is always going to be when you start a project, and so I get that. But man, that really is a big oversight. I agree with, I'm going to vote yes to move this, to approve this, or recommend approval. Is that what we're, no, it's a short plat. So to approve it, because again, the variance isn't that big of a deal for me. It's how it was brought about. And to the young lady who testified that this kind of feels like a bait and switch, that's exactly what I was feeling. And that bothers me, because you get a project this far along down the road, and then they come back, the developer comes back and wants to change it for.
Well, and I think the thing that makes me feel better about it is it's a family deal. And you guys know what happens.
Well,
in
the
families.
trust,
It could have been it could have honestly been something as simple as a discussion at 4th of July dinner. And Dad finally says, you know what? I gotta change something here because I can see what's gonna happen. If I don't do something like this, there's gonna be knockdown, drag-out fights, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
So,
And so the trust, and that's
Trust.
where I can understand them having to come back and do this with the trust and how those things work down the road with families. And when somebody dies, it saves a lot of fighting. So I can totally understand how this could have been an oversight, and then this trust came to be. And then the other thing that I'm thankful for is it's all going to be managed by one property management company, because then if you start having different property management companies on the same project like this, one is good or two are good, but then you get one that doesn't care, where if it's all under one and it's all under the trust, I think it'll protect it. And I think, I honestly think it was a mistake, and things have changed since they started this project, and they wanted to get things covered for down the road and make things easier for when that time comes that we all get to face, so.
Yeah, and that consistency is important, and I appreciate because family dynamics change. We don't ever know what that's gonna be like.
Is there a good reason that our requirements for subdivisions are different than they are for multifamily?
Over there with the glasses.
So the question is, for a multifamily development to come in on its own in an RMH zone, why are the standards different than if it were to subdivide, right? So I'm not really sure how to answer that, except to say that when you go into RMH zone and you don't subdivide, there's essentially you're proposing it as one development.
Right.
it's cohesive, right? It has connections in ways that maybe you couldn't have in a subdivision with different property owners and everything. So a subdivision isn't necessary in that situation. When a subdivision happens, we have the ability to get open space where sometimes we haven't been able to do that on an RMH zone just all by itself, except for the multifamily requirement of 5%. So we could incorporate some of those same standards into every single zone. It just makes it easier to do in a subdivision process because then you're dividing out the land and you're designating it for specific purposes. But you could have some similar requirements. The thing is, though, in this situation, the setbacks are not different. They're the same. If they were to have kept those property lines, it would have been 15 feet for the living space from the property line. So the subdivision doesn't change that. But if it were just a single property, no subdivision, no property lines internal, yeah, they could have been closer to each other. But then that's because it's going to be one property owner,
Yeah.
cohesive.
Well, it makes sense to
development.
me that you would have more setbacks on parcels that aren't the same. Like,
Yeah.
if it's all one lot that you could build closer, it makes sense to me that you'd want more separation there if they're
Yeah.
separate lots.
And that sometimes comes down to building standards as well, just safety standards. You don't want to be too close to another property line and have damage done to the other property across that property line. But it also comes down to if it's an imposing building and it's really close to the property line, the use of the property next to it is impacted. And so that's why those standards need to be different, because it's different property owners.
We're
But
just talking about perimeter setbacks, aren't we?
no, internal.
Well, yeah, no, that was one of the questions that I had when they came up and said they wanted the waiver for the two buildings down there at that, southwest corner, those two buildings. And I went back to look at the code because I was worried about the fire separation distance between those two buildings. It's gonna be fine, once I looked at it, but that is a concern that was not there. If that property line wasn't there, it would be no
Correct.
issue. But now that property line does exist, then it becomes a problem, or a potential problem. It's not now, but anyway, so yeah, there's a difference.
Yeah, so when I said that there's no difference between them, I was speaking about in those internal property lines, not the perimeter.
Right.
And I think maybe it'd be a little bit different if they hadn't started building yet, and each one of the 5 lots was sold, and somebody wanted to build a 2-story here, and a 3-story here, and a single story here, and then it changes, but we already know what all the buildings are gonna look like. They're all gonna be built the same, out of basically the same material, and like I said, I really don't think anybody's gonna know that there's 5 lots there. I really don't. It's just more of a legal, like you said, trust thing to cover all bases later, and I feel good about it with the management company too. I think that's key.
One of the things that I looked at was who is building this. Hawkins Company, if it's the same one that I'm aware of, has been around for a long time. And it doesn't have a bad reputation. You don't hear all the time that they try and snuck one by, which some companies do.
Till now.
So,
Gotta start somewhere.
I didn't say that, he did. But I feel more comfortable knowing the company that's doing this than I would a lot of other companies. And that gives me a feeling that they did really just, somebody screwed up, and they fixed it. The main thing is they fixed it, and that's important too. So I feel comfortable with this.
Well, with that, I'll make a motion to approve the subdivision short plat for Broadstone Townhome subdivision at 902 South Fern Street in the RMH zoning district for Hawkins Companies LLC, representing Kennedy Family Ventures LLC, with the recommended conditions, and adopt the potential findings in the staff report.
And do you want to include that CAMA?
Is
CAMA.
is that part of the staff report, or?
Madam Chair, that was not added, if you would like to add that.
Yeah, we do. I do want to add, make sure we add that CAMA maintenance agreement.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, action item number 2, annexation and zoning to RS 8.5 for 2909 East Victory Road. Do we have the applicant here? Come on down. Give us your name and address and tell us what you're wanting to do.
Yeah, I'm Olga Suntsov, and I live at the 2909 East Victory Road. And
Can you pull the mic down just a little bit so we can hear you? There you go.
And we would like to have the pressurized irrigation. And since they do the road right now, they already put the irrigation for almost each lot in our road. I mean, like opposite and on our side. And we were asking because we always have a canal, and like the water, when we open the gate for the water come in, and for 10 years we lived there, we never get the flooded ever. Sometimes just get a little bit closer water, but it's never get the water all the way to our property. And for those 10 years, we always pay the taxes, but we never get the water, or never. That's why when they start building those roads and they put those pressurized irrigation in our property and like the other neighbors, that's why I asked the who come over and they'd ask if they're gonna work in our property, put the pressurized. And that's when I asked if it's okay if we can have the pressurized also, since we never get the water and we kind of want the water, our land.
Okay. All right, well, we'll hear from staff, and if we have any questions, we'll call you back up.
Okay, thank you.
When it's time for public hearing.
The answer is yes, but in a few minutes.
Okay, Rodney.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, pretty straightforward project here. Wanting annexation to zoning of RS 8.5 for pressurized irrigation, and this is at 2909 East Victory Road. There's the aerial view. Here's some potential findings for the annexation. And staff can recommend approval of this request based on these findings. Number one, with the annexation of a portion of right-of-way, the property is contiguous with city limits to the north. On letter B, the proposed RS 8.5 zoning district is consistent with the comprehensive plan future land use map designation of medium-density residential. Therefore, the RS 8.5 single-family residential zoning would not create a spot zone. Letter C, the land uses in the area consist of Canyon County large lot residential and city medium-density residential. So this area of the city is developing as medium-density residential with some higher density less than half a mile to the west. So it is consistent. That zone is consistent. Letter D, city services and utilities are available to this property. Nampa City Council approved a single-family subdivision of Walton Woods directly to the west in October of 2022. And the property is already developed as a single-family residence and will continue the use. They are requesting connection to city pressurized irrigation services. Letter E, city codes are written to protect the public interest by providing guidance for development. Therefore, this project is presumed to be in the public interest because if it proposes no changes to the existing use of the property except to connect to city services. It is in the interest of the city to provide utility connections to existing customers. And then last, all necessary right-of-way has already been dedicated to the city related to this project. So those are the basis that staff is suggesting as potential findings for you. Engineering comments were pretty standard. Here are their general comments, then their conditions, and these are all very standard conditions. Building department, same thing. Here's the recommended conditions of approval based on those engineering conditions. And here's a motion for your consideration.
Okay.
Rodney,
Yes.
curiosity question. When we have an applicant comes to the city with a project like this, does anybody sit down with them and say, oh, by the way, you do have to pay city taxes now, which you didn't pay before, you just paid county taxes? Does anybody sit down?
From a planning perspective, we
Are they made to realize that they're going to be paying more in taxes? Yes, sir.
I guess I don't know. I don't know. It depends on their questions to us, and I don't think there's any standard statement that we make every time somebody comes in. I guess we presume that they understand that
Yeah, but not
you come into the
everybody-
city. Yeah, understood. I was looking to Daniel to see if there was any kind of conversation when they connect to utilities and what.
So we certainly talk about the requirement to annex and that. The specific discussion of taxes is not one that necessarily always comes up. It happens
Do
where
we
that.
say, hey, it's not a freebie? I mean, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for this?
Well, I mean, we talk about the connection fees that they have to pay and the bills they'll receive for the irrigation, all that kind of stuff. Specifically on the city taxes, that's likely sometime, I mean, I've been in conversations where that's discussed and people will ask specifically, how much will my taxes go up? And we refer them over to the county for that because we don't have that information directly. But that's not something that is, you know, it can somewhat depend on what questions are asked.
Rodney, couldn't there be something, just kind of like a check sheet, with, oh, by the way?
Sure. Yeah, and maybe as part of our application, the physical application, maybe we have something on there that they acknowledge that they understand that. We'll have to talk about that as
Yeah, 'cause this is going to be
staff.
ongoing now. It's not
Yeah.
just a one-time fee.
That's correct.
Just stay out of the weeds about how much they might be paying is
Yeah,
really, because we don't.
it's an
know that.
unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and that could be simply just on that document. You know, please refer to Canyon County for
sorry.
tax change questions.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that'd be ideal, something like that. So just to make them aware that, oh, by the way, they get that bill in the mail, so what's this for?
Yep.
I still do that when I get a bill.
Yeah, I got my county taxes last week too, that's what I mean.
One other question while we're talking. So they're just hooking up to pressurized irrigation. Are they going to have to abandon their personal well? Not
No.
until,
We have stubbed water and sewer to them with the project, or water to the project. Sewer does not extend in that location yet. The Walton Woods subdivision will be bringing it down.
right.
But no, until such time as they choose to go off of their domestic well, they would not be required to abandon that.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to public hearing. I have nobody signed up other than the applicant. Do we have anybody that would like to speak for?
No, your turn.
Come on down and give us your name and address and tell us what you want to tell us.
My name's Cliff Burnside. I live at 3 North Kings Road, what they call Kings Road Roundabout that we call the cops about every weekend because we got stupid people that live in Nampa nowadays. Anyway, why I came for her is because I don't think they can understand when someone came to her and said, this is what you gotta do. Do it this roundabout, and it goes from not only Kings Road, it's also part of Victory Road. And out of all the houses, why did they pick on them to have to do what she's doing? Everybody else got free. When they come in and put it, hook it up into your yard, and they say, okay, you don't have pressurized irrigation, they didn't come to us and say that I have to pay for it. Now, I know water, I have to pay for water. So there's gonna be a bill sometime that says I have to pay for pressurized irrigation, I would assume. But they did not say anything about me being city, because we're still all annexed county. There's like, 15 homes of us, there's still annexed county. We don't have water. We don't have sewer. We don't have gas. We're county. We have electric and we have sewer or septic tanks and rain fields.
And you're on the pressurized irrigation.
Now, they gave it, that was part of the thing when they came in and said, we're gonna destroy your whole neighborhood for a while, so we're gonna give this to you for free. That's what we were told. That's what we were
So
told.
let me get this straight. Are you saying that they were,
They were asked to pay to hook up. The rest of us were not.
this is not their decision?
It seemed
To
like
do
they
that?
were kind of told it was already there. You guys put it in. And then they come to them and say, no, to hook up to it, you have to pay this. No, you guys already put it in. They didn't tell her to put it in.
Was it part of the people that were affected right by the roundabout construction?
No,
speak
it
to it
goes to the
once
school. It goes extended to the school. For some reason, they went further. So it is a little different, but it's all due to the roundabout. You wouldn't be doing anything unless the roundabout, and then I don't know who's coming in, Corey
But
Park next to him.
let me get this straight. So what you're saying is that they were told, if you want to hook up, you need to pay this.
Yep.
They weren't being told you need to hook
And
up.
the other three people that are
I
on the
mean,
same.
was that they're being told, if you want to hook up, you have to pay, not you have to hook up?
Correct.
Okay.
It's already hooked up. They put it in before they asked anybody. It came in, it was there. They come home from work and there it is.
Okay.
And now they're telling you have to pay, and they paid.
We'll
Then all
hear
of a sudden
from,
you have to come here and say, it sounds funny, they said, well, you gotta come in and make sure it's okay, and then they have to pay, I don't know how much they've paid, and then they said, well, it's not even for sure that you're gonna get this. And now you're wanting to raise taxes. Now, why were the other three homes that are right by them, they're not here? They didn't get the same letters. They weren't told you have to be here, you need to go, you have to pay for the hookup.
we'll ask city staff.
Well, let me,
I just want you to know the whole thing.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Daniel?
Come on down.
So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, the city is stubbing utilities to each property with the roundabout construction so that the roads don't have to be cut when and if people choose to connect. Just because we have stubbed a service to the property does not give them the right to utilize that until fees are paid and annexation has happened. So just by virtue of there being a stub on that property, unless there was something negotiated in a right-of-way negotiation, it would not allow them to utilize that service until they had paid the applicable connection fees and annexed into the city or signed an annexation agreement if annexation was not, if they were not contiguous. And so I was trying to pull up the right-of-way negotiations, but it won't let me sign into my computer in my office to see
And what you're
that.
saying makes sense. It's there, but you can't use it until you pay for it.
Correct.
So what's this about some people getting free hookups?
That's the only time that would happen, and they would not be free hookups. What would happen is if we were negotiating right-of-way purchase, and as part of that negotiation, a service was negotiated to be done, the project pays those fees in lieu of the property owner paying those fees. And so I unfortunately can't get into my computer to verify if there were properties on that project that had that negotiated or not. But that's all part of the right-of-way negotiations, not something just independent just because the project is there. They do get the service lateral install, but not the right to use that until such time as those fees are paid.
The applicant mentioned something about having a hard time getting water to her lot for years and
That-
years.
That would be the flood irrigation system.
Right.
And so that's not something the city has control over and is often difficulties between the point of delivery from the irrigation district through other private properties and private ditches, not something the city
Sure,
controls.
I understand that's irrigation district, but, okay.
So any reimbursement's gonna have to go to the district, right?
So there would be no reimbursement.
But it would still be with the district, not the city,
Well, so
as far as that particular issue is concerned.
you are paying for the right to the water right, not for actual water. And so in order for the city to serve it pressurized irrigation, you have to have an underlying surface water right. So maintaining that and paying for that over the years is the smart thing to do, whether you actually get the water or not. It can negatively impact your property values if you give up your water rights.
There's a lot of people that pay for their water rights that
I
don't
know,
have water.
it sounds so not right,
If you don't pay it for so long, then they can come take your property.
all right.
Yeah.
Daniel, what's the pressurized irrigation service? It's just a stub to their property. They still have to do the physical work to put in the access valves and all that stuff to
So
get it right.
we stubbed that service lateral there, so that we don't have to dig the road up. It's there, but that does not give the property owner the right to use it until the fees are paid and an annexation is done.
Right, and so they go through this process, then they'll have access to go ahead and access that and plumb it into their property from the.
So it's already plumbed into the property.
Okay.
There's a service lateral there already. That includes the shut-off valve,
okay.
the everything there. It's just typically what we would do if on a project like this, we would close the valve. Typically we don't. If we are made aware of someone utilizing it without having gone through the proper process, we'll work with them on that. If it becomes a problem, typically we'll fill in the valves so they can't operate it, kind of deal.
So I know you can't access the right-of-way contracts and stuff, and with him being right on the corner, do you think there's any way that they could have negotiated that in without being annexed into the city, that they would allow it?
No, the city code is very specific about if you are connecting to a city utility, you have to annex into the city limits. The only time that doesn't happen is if we have a line out there and your property is not contiguous to the city, and so therefore we can not legally annex you to. We will allow for a connection at that point, but at that point, the property owner has to sign an agreement that at such time as they become contiguous, they consent to the annexation. And similar to when the church out at Orchard and Middleton, they had to sign those agreements. Once the subdivision to the north of them annexed, they became contiguous, and so we exercised that annexation agreement there.
So even if people were getting a free hookup potentially from the right-of-way agreement, in order to access that, they would have to annex as well?
Typically, yes. There have been some situations where there have been financial considerations that made it in the best interest of the city to allow it to remain in the county for X number of years or until the property sales, something of that nature. But those are few and far between where there's something that those are typically would be in a situation where we have, X amount of dollars that we would have to spend putting in new flood irrigation systems versus allowing a connection to the irrigation system on the domestic or on our irrigation system where there's financial considerations that make it in the best interest of the city. And again, those are negotiated in those right-of-way negotiations.
And on these, to kind of change topics, help make sure I remember the improvements they have to make in the right of way? Is she gonna have to put in sidewalk and?
That is all actually, it's already in the
Oh, okay.
project, that's all being built with the project. And we should hopefully be paving the last leg of that Thursday.
So that's not more cost that she's
No,
gonna have to?
no, there's no, that's all being done with the project and will be completed there.
So they're getting what they want, and that, they're not getting anything that nobody else got.
No, they are not.
Okay, it was fair.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak for, against, or undecided? You've already had your chance to testify. We can't have you come up again. I'm sorry. Okay, you know when?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
Madam Chair, I think we forgot to allow the applicant to come up at
Oh,
the end there. You might have to motion to open the public hearing again.
so do we just ask if they'd have something to say before we do that?
That's a good idea.
Okay, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay,
Make a motion that we reopen public hearing.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to reopen public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is open again. No, you've already spoke, so, but the applicant has a chance that they can come back up if they want to ask further questions.
I think in fairness, I do, I mean, because of the communication
barrier.
difficulty and language barrier, I would like to hear maybe what he has to say, but that's just my opinion. I don't.
I'm more than happy to talk to you after the public hearing and.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the best way to do that then, is just have a conversation with staff.
Rodney?
Hold on just a sec, okay?
Madam Chair, I would just encourage you, if you do have somebody to come up, that they need to represent the applicant, not another perspective.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. If he has something to say
But how do you
that
know
the
that?
applicant, but again, yeah, we don't, but that's just me. I don't want to, I mean, public hearing is open again, so. But it sounds like maybe the conversation is best had with city staff
Yeah.
for clarification.
Yeah, because I think you've got two issues. You have the issue of the applicant, and then you have the issue that's been stated by the gentleman here that, about the other people that are involved, and that's not under consideration with this application, so.
Right.
Olga, did you have anything you wanted to come up and say? You need to come up to the microphone.
And Madam Chair, there was a question about whether she had been told about the cost increases for property value or property taxes.
No.
So you weren't aware that you'd be paying city property taxes when you annex into the city?
Yeah, I would like to know how much, but yeah, and we still kind of want the pressurized irrigation too.
Okay, so the county, you'd have to talk to the Canyon County, and they could tell you what the difference is going to be annexing in.
Oh, I have to pay annex again?
No.
When you become part of the city of Napa, your taxes are going to go up some compared to the county taxes because you'll be receiving city services besides the pressurized irrigation, fire, and city police and that. So your taxes will go up.
Because
These guys don't know what the tax rate is, so you'll have to call the county to find out, give them your address. They can figure out the tax code and they can give you what that dollar amount's going to be.
it's the same, like where I pay my, like, taxes for the irrigation? That's the same people?
No, the irrigation taxes, that's a separate bill.
Yeah, that's what we usually do once a year.
Right.
Correct.
And that will
That's the
remain.
one.
But you're,
And-
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's like, the city we are not going to be considered to the county anymore. We're going to be considered to the city.
Correct.
Do we still have to pay county taxes also for the irrigation and also the city taxes irrigation? Or it's going to be just the one?
So you will receive the property taxes will still come from Canyon County. The irrigation tax will come from the city of Nampa rather than Nampa Meridian Irrigation District. So you will still only receive one property tax bill and one irrigation tax bill. There will be an increase to those because of the city services and being within the city, but you will still receive only the two bills, the one likely through your mortgage, if you have one, and the other would come from the city of Nampa rather than the Nampa Meridian Irrigation District.
Do you know by any chance how much it will be, or?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Every household is different amount.
Olga, do you own your house outright or you pay a monthly mortgage?
Mortgage.
Okay, so your mortgage company will adjust that with the new taxes. So they'll take it into effect and pay it, but your monthly mortgage payment will go up once they find out what those taxes are going to be. And then the mortgage company will pay your taxes, but your bill is going to go up because of those taxes once they figure out what that new tax rate's going to be.
But we usually pay once a year for the property.
Oh, it's not escrowed then.
Oh, you're not, okay, well then you're going to have the bill, so it won't be going through your escrows, so.
And they're gonna make up taxes for the property and also taxes more for their irrigation. That's how I understand.
You're going to get a different bill for the irrigation. It's going to be City of Nampa versus Nampa Meridian Irrigation, so it's just going to swap.
Yeah, and it's also gonna be more than what we paid right now.
Correct, that's what Daniel said.
But you'll get water for your acre and a half.
Yes, that would be nice. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think kind of understand, but I want to really understand, like,
Okay.
if it's approved or
Well,
denied.
okay, and Daniel can talk to you guys after as well to clarify some things
Okay,
even more.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Olga.
And just a reminder that it will need to go on to city council.
Sure.
So she just wanted to make sure she understood that.
Yeah, so we'll make a recommendation, either approval or denial, and that goes to city council. And so if we say approve it and then goes to city council, it's up to them to vote yes or no on that as well. So you'll,
Almost always vote yes.
yeah, but with items like this, it's 99% they're going to say yes.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed. And I thought this was going to be easy.
Me too.
Well, I think there's two questions here. It's whether she really wants to do this and whether we should let her. I think the question is if she really wants to, we should let her. I don't have any
Right.
issue recommending
Right,
approval for
and
this.
she's wanting,
And,
She wants the water.
and if she needs to talk to staff to get more clarification on all the implications of the approval, then I think we should have her, that she should do that. And, I mean, I guess if we approve it, does it mean she has to move forward?
No, and in fact, they're gonna have lots of opportunity to withdraw if they don't want to have this done. Even if city council approves it, there still has to be an ordinance that gets read and published, and they can withdraw at any time there too.
Would you make sure they understand all this?
So I think if they have that understanding and they can make sure they know that they don't have to do this, I don't have any problem. If they want to do it, I don't think anybody here has a problem with it, so.
It seemed like when she just spoke to us, she made it clear that she understands the implications and still wants it, so
Yeah.
Right.
That was
I feel
yeah.
comfortable with it.
It's not like it's $1 million more.
Well,
Not quite.
it's getting there.
We'll take up a collection paid for. How about that? Okay.
I guess I would move to recommend approval of the annexation and zoning to RS 8.5 zoning district for 2909 East Victory Road for Olga Sumtsov with all findings and conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend approval to City Council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that will go on to City Council, so you'll get a chance to hopefully talk to staff in the meantime, and then you can ask more questions at City Council if you still need to ask questions. Okay, thank you.
I learned a lot, though, in that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, action item number 3, a conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 4 dogs at 706 North Copper Tree Drive. Do we have the applicant? Yes. Hello.
Hello, my name is Carl Watts. I live at 706 North Copper Tree Drive.
Tell us about your dogs.
I have 2 dogs that I'd originally had. Chubby is almost 15 years old. He's a mix of Corgi and Beagle. The other 2.5, 3 years old, Chance is a Red-Bone Coonhound.
Okay.
And the other one's a Lab mix and kind of a wire-haired. The 2 girls that we got later, we actually didn't know that there was an ordinance for only 2 dogs. It was during the whole COVID mess, and the people who had the 2 dogs were hoping to keep the 2 sisters together, and they were getting a new baby, and they were living in an apartment, and with the small yard that they had, it was just better for them to take and find somebody to take care of them. And we just thought it was a good playmate for the younger dog so that he didn't wear out the old dog. So basically, that was just it. We were just looking to take and keep them all together, have a good time.
So you rescued 2 and you're just trying to keep them all.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll hear from staff. We may have questions for you.
Sure.
All right, Christy.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Christy Watkins, Principal Planner for the City of Nampa. The request before you this evening is for a conditional use permit for a kennel license to keep 4 dogs at 706 North Copper Tree Drive. This is a picture of the front and the side of the house, the yard area. So the findings for approval, staff feels comfortable recommending approval based on these criteria. No comments or issues or complaints were submitted by the neighbors or by animal control. Having these 4 dogs at this location does not adversely affect the livability or appropriate development of the abutting properties and the surrounding neighborhood. A conditional use permit and kennel license is required to be approved per Nampa City Code 1032 and Nampa City Code 1012C to house more than 2 dogs on a property in an RS6 zone. Again, when we were talking about the convenient and functional living of the area, no comments, issues, or complaints were submitted by neighbors or animal control, so we don't see an issue with that. The project, these criteria sometimes are kind of hard to apply to dogs. So we can turn this around and say that having 4 dogs in this case, considering the fact that there have been no complaints from animal control, would not affect the successful operation of the neighborhood. So correspondence, typical correspondence from the building department, potential conditions of approval requiring that they get a kennel license after the appeal period is complete. And these are the potential motions. I will stand for any questions.
Krista, you have a question for you, please.
Okay.
In the application for the CUP, it asked length of time requested for the conditional use permit, and they had 30 years.
It's 15. Are you sure you weren't talking months?
Yeah, that was, 30 years, I mean, no offense, but the dogs aren't going to live that long.
Commissioner Kehoe, that question probably shouldn't apply to animal.
I was hoping maybe somebody at staff might have caught that, but apparently they did not.
Unless you got a few turtles, maybe they would last 30.
Well, you would need a CUP for turtles, so.
Okay, that's good. Can somebody get me the sign-up sheet, Parker, maybe, since Daniel has abandoned us?
Oh, look at, guests are now getting it and doing Daniel's job.
He's going to ask for a paycheck.
A Napa jacket.
Yes, an approval.
I don't even have one.
Brownie points.
It's not going to help your case any, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, hearing number 3. So we have nobody signed up on here. Is there anybody present that would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this? Okay.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is closed.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 4 dogs in a RS6 zoning district, 706 North Copper Tree Drive for Carl Watts, with findings for approval and conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the CUP. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now I got to read you my spiel here. This conditional use permits approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission will become effective 15 calendar days from the date of this hearing unless an appeal has been filed with the Planning and Zoning Department with the appropriate fee. No action should be taken by the applicant on a CUP until the appeal period has concluded. The applicant must confirm with Planning and Zoning staff that there have been no appeals. All righty. Keep
Thank
up
you,
the
Mr.
good
Watts.
work on your pups.
Send us a picture of them in 30 years.
You never know, there's always medical advances.
Yeah. That'd be funny.
Okay, public hearing number 4, conditional use permit for non-commercial kennel license for 3346 South Wood River Avenue. Do we have the applicant here?
Oh, online.
Hi.
Online.
I'm on a team meeting. Unfortunately, I came down with COVID. I can't be present.
Okay, go ahead and tell us what you're trying to do.
We moved here about a year and a half ago into the city of Nampa to this property. Went through a property management. We had the dogs listed on our lease agreement. We didn't know about the city ordinance of not having more than 2 dogs. And then we had an incident with the animal control, and Officer Lincoln let us know about the ordinance, and we got on it. In the meantime, the old owners offered us the property for purchase. So we purchased the property, which delayed the application for the conditional use permit. And here we are.
Okay, and you have 4 dogs and they're getting out, and we have some
They got
reports.
out one. Yes, they got out once. My kids were home. I have teenagers. It was a nice spring day, and my son's window was open upstairs. He removed his screen at one point, and 2 of the dogs got on the roof and got out. Yes.
Okay. And what breed are all the dogs?
They are Lab and Pyrenees mix.
All 4 of them?
All 4 of them.
Okay. All right, well, we'll hear from city staff, and we'll probably have some questions for you afterwards.
Of course.
Okay, Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There isn't too much to add into this. This is in a single-family area surrounded by single-family homes. The animal report comments, as well as the police incident report, are in the staff report. There's a picture of the outside of the home and an aerial view. We're aware of the requirement for a CUP for more than 2 dogs. Christie had just covered the conclusions of law for a conditional use permit, so I won't cover that again. I will cover the revocation process here. In the event of a violation of any of the conditions, the planning and director or his designee may revoke any CUP. Then the city staff will investigate the complaint. Upon complaint, city staff will go investigate, and at which time, if it's deemed credible, then the CUP will be revoked, and they can come in and reapply for a conditional use permit at that point. Again, comments from animal control were in the staff report. There were comments received by neighbor and the HOA. Those were in the staff report as well, and I believe some of those people are here to comment. The staff analysis, there's not much for staff to add, other than commission would need to determine whether the proposed use would negatively impact the public, and add any mitigating conditions to it. Conditions of approval are in the staff report as well. We have potential findings for both approval and denial for you to adopt upon your approval or denial, and there's a potential motion for you. Now I'll stand for any questions.
Parker, how many police reports have there been made against these dogs?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, there was just the one incident that the police report is about. And then there's follow-up with animal control that they've come to the address and followed up with the owner.
How many times did they do that?
Um,
I'll save you the trouble. I counted 9.
Trick question.
That's not a trick question. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and when you have 9 violations, don't you think you ought to bring that to our attention?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, I'm not sure if those are 9 violations or 9 visits to the property.
9 times they had to have contact with the applicant. Whether there was follow-up because they didn't do something the first time, or the second time, or the third time, it's contact with the applicant. 9 times, not counting one from 2 years ago, which make it 10.
So your assumption is that all 9 of those visits were based on complaints from neighbors?
There's variations. If you read them, they're all in here. I mean, it's pages of them. I've never seen so many. I'm just appalled, to be honest.
Any other questions for staff?
How do you like that one, Parker?
No other questions for staff at this time? Okay, we'll go to public hearing. Okay, I have some people signed up against the proposal. Dave Runkle, come on down. Give us your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to tell us all you're going to tell us.
All right. My name is Dave Runkle. I live at 4359 East Locksaw River Drive, about a half a block away from the applicant's residence. On March, I believe, 28th, while I was outside watering my lawn, I was approached by 2 dogs. I'm thinking, oh, puppies got out, okay, but they're big puppies. And one of them came up and bit me on the back, and then I moved my hand to get the dogs away, and they bit my hand, or it bit my hand. I got the hose and to get them off me, and then they ran off and they ran down to the park and attacked many other people at the park. I went inside. I said, told my wife I just got attacked by a dog. She's like, no way. And so we're looking for the dogs, went down to the park, and finally, it just was a bad day on everybody's part. There was a child that was bit on the rear end. A 2-year-old child was lifted up away from the dog. The reason why I am opposed to this is because it could have been a lot worse. I think we dodged a bullet that day, and I do not want to see a repeat. Time where somebody gets mauled or seriously hurt more than I was. I had to go to the doctor. The doctor said it was a good thing I went because of puncture wounds on my hand. Good thing I didn't put peroxide on it, like I would think, just a normal thing to do, or put Neosporin on it. He said, nope, that would have encapsulated the wound, and I could have got a worse infection. I did contact animal control, asked them if the dogs had rabies shots. They said, yes, they did. But I don't want this to ever happen again. So I just want to go on the record, and I'm one of many people that will probably tell you the same exact thing.
Did you get your medical bills paid for?
It was ordered for restitution to be paid through the court. I have not received any payment.
Have you seen the dogs out since then?
No, I haven't, but my neighbors have told me on their Ring cameras and other people that have just noticed that the gentleman walks his dogs like very, very late at night, like between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's why we haven't seen the dogs out and about.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have Brad Terry.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Brad Terry. I live at 3323 South Clearwater Court. So 3323 South Clearwater Court is directly behind 3346 Wood River. So I'm here to oppose the CUP for the dogs also. So the dogs, as Mr. Runkle also told you, the police reports, I sent the police reports to you guys. So that's the one instance where the dog got out. I believe it bit at least 4 people, one adult or 1 or 2 adults and several kids. There was also an instance which didn't get called until later where the dog went through the neighbor directly to the north of their house. 2 of their dogs went through the fence and started fighting with the Great Pyrenees that lives next to them. And I know one of the owners of the dogs that live at 3346 had to go out and get their dogs and pull them back in. So that's just the 2 instances we know of where they've caused problems out in public. The other problem with the dogs is anytime we enter our backyard, if their dogs are out, their dogs come to the fence and they sound like if they could get through, they'd be taking a leg off. That's what they sound like when they come out. Also, whenever their dogs are let out, they begin barking at each other. So whatever time of day that is, if they're let out, midnight, 7 in the morning, those dogs go at it for a minute or 2 at least until somebody either brings them in or they have enough of it. The dogs are a nuisance, and I think they're a threat to the public. So I stand against it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Raina Scott.
Hi, everybody. My name is Raina Scott. I live at 3323 South Clearwater Court in Nampa. You just heard from my husband. I'm here to oppose this application as well for all of the reasons stated by the 2 prior speakers. For me, like Brad said, we share the fence line. We haven't been able to use our backyard for as long as the applicant has been living there because the dog, it doesn't take anything to trigger the dogs. I could cough in my upstairs bedroom and the dogs are at the fence barking and going at it. I view this from my bedroom window and I see how vicious and violent the dogs are. They're scary. We have a lot of small kids in the neighborhood. I have a granddaughter. They've already broke through the fence to the neighbor, and the unpredictability and lack of being able to control these animals, it's just very scary to live there. So for those reasons and everything that everybody else said, I would just ask for compassion on this situation and not grant this petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sherry Ann Runkle, you don't want to speak, but you want to be on the record as opposed. Okay, and then we have Aaron Bevan also that wants to go on the record as against, but doesn't want to speak. Okay. Is there anybody else present that would like to speak for, against, or undecided? Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Mark Summers. I live at 4378 East Alderstone Street. I'm about 4 doors away from the park, Osborne Park. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog on a leash, and I was headed north on the path going through Osborne Park. And these 2 dogs that this man owns were loose. They came all the way from their house. They came to the park and they attacked my dog as we were walking away. I didn't see it until I looked down and my dog is being mauled by these 2 dogs. I did as much as I could to fight these dogs off, but they were very persistent. I'd try and kick at them and they just back away long enough while the other one's biting, the other one's sort of baiting me, I guess. But anyways, this is not one time that these dogs got out. That was the first time that they got out that I ever seen the dogs before. And some people came running and they sort of spooked the dogs off finally. But these dogs, supposedly, the lady that owns the dogs came down, she apologized, and she says, this never happened before. The dogs got past me at the front door as I was trying to leave. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I should file a report, but then I thought, well, okay, this is gonna be a one-time thing. It shouldn't happen again, but it has happened again. And these dogs are dangerous. I don't think that they should even be in the community there. I don't even know why they have 4 dogs that are just, 2 dogs are too dangerous as it is. They shouldn't be in that community. We have too many kids going to school and coming from. It's a danger to anybody that walks a small dog. There's a lot of dogs that come and go from that park. And if those dogs know where the park is, they know where they can go have some fun eating a dog that somebody else is walking. So I oppose giving this man a permit, and I hope that the city will find a way to make these dogs leave the community, because we have a nice community with lots of friendly people and friendly dogs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Come ahead.
My name is Tim Dyke. I live a couple doors down from Mark, 4322 East Alderstone. We live on the entrance to Osborne Park, so we know all the dog owners and all the dogs from our neighborhood. They all pass by our house. Very friendly dogs, very friendly people. We love the neighborhood. I can only speak, I'm sorry for the situation with the house. I have not realized what you guys put up with, but I remember the dogs running by at full speed going, what is that? You know, going by this driveway or the parkway and just going, who's in charge, you know? And then we didn't actually see the biting of anything, but it was just terrifying to see a dog that size and acting vicious to go freely down there. So again, just want to add, I oppose having 4 dogs. We'd all oppose having 2 dogs at this point.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Smith. I live at 4101 East Switzer Way. I actually saw the attack that happened here on Mark and his dog Hurley. I have never seen 2 dogs behave that way. And when I saw that happen, me myself as an Army veteran, I was scared. And fortunately, I did not have my dogs with me. But, you know, as soon as I saw Mark fall down, because he did get caught up in Hurley's leash, because Hurley was on his leash at the time, I was scared that the dogs would seriously hurt Mark and the dog Hurley. So I would like to oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else left that hasn't testified? Okay, I think we got the whole room. Okay. All right, sir, do you want to address some of these concerns that the neighbors have expressed?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize to anybody who came in contact with them the day they got out. That was a very sad day for everybody, for the community and for us as well. And, you know, as far as the restitution and the court papers, I just received a new copy of the the court order, made the first payment on it about a week ago. So the gentleman will get reimbursed for his medical bill shortly. As far as the neighbors behind us, with all honesty, we try to make sure as soon as the dogs bark more than 1 or 2 times, we bring them all in, try to respect them. They are out there with a air horn, blowing it at, they never really blow it at our dogs. They blow it at, there's other dogs in the neighborhood who bark, and their owner let them outside, leave them outside for a long period of time, going on and on and on. I hear it too. I can imagine somebody who doesn't own dogs or like dogs, it can be a nuisance. We try our very best. As soon as they start barking, we bring them in. As far as the broken fence, that was between both of the dogs, between our house and the neighbor to the north of us, and that fence got fixed within an hour. The broken fence board, hour or two. They called me. I took off from work, came home, and fixed it right away. And actually, I believe the neighbor's dog wasn't outside at the time when my dogs jumped over the broken fence, or the hole in the fence. Other than that, we had these dogs for a long time. They're really nice and cuddly inside. I don't know when they were off leash. That sounds. I totally understand that. That sounded terrifying. The stories everybody told, and as far as walking them late, I mean, I walk them late. I don't have a normal 9 to 5 schedule. I walk them after work, sometimes 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's very rare that later than that. And it's for no other reason, just that's when I get off of work.
Mr. Platson,
I discussed this with Officer Lincoln as well. She brought it up to me that they were saying that I walk them purposely late at night. That's not the reason. It just, that's how my schedule works.
Mr. Platson, I've got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You said you recently bought the house, so back in...
That was the delay and the back and forth with animal control with Officer Lincoln. We stayed in touch with her because originally when we were trying to get the CUP, we needed a signature from the owner of the property.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, we were going through a property management. We requested a signature, and I don't know if they just didn't care or didn't get it, or maybe the owners already knew that they're putting the house up on the market.
So my question though is on a report from Officer Lincoln on 5/17 of 22,
yes,
you stated that you still had the 4 dogs and you were given a notice to vacate. Was that from the property management company?
No, that was from. It wasn't a notice to vacate. They gave us a notice that they're putting the house up for sale. I think Officer Lincoln might have misunderstood it. We explained it to her that they're putting the house up for sale. They just notified us the day before I talked to her. I remember the incident, that they're putting the house up for sale. And we talked to her, and she said, well, in that case, let's wait a little bit, see what happens, because there's no reason to get a CUP if we have to move. And then the previous owner offered it to us a little bit later, maybe a week or 2 later. They offered it to us if we wanted to buy the property.
Okay, and my other kind of question or concern or comment or, these are pretty big dogs, and they were out on your roof, and they jumped off the roof?
I guess.
That kind of concerns me, that if they can get out on the roof and they're not afraid to jump, they can go pretty much anywhere if a window's open. And,
well, ever since, that was March 28th, we make sure that the windows are shut. We have gates in the house. The dogs stay in the crate when we're not at home. They crated. yeah, nobody, like animal control and the police officer were like, well, I believe the police officer said that he had heard or seen something like this before. But yeah, it was a very odd incident. I agree.
Anybody else have any questions for him? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Motion to close public hearing.
Been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
I have a question for staff. This goes back to the, if we deny, what can the city do if he just continues to live and have 4 dogs?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, the animal control would take over the situation and they would do whatever they do to follow their code as far as they would have to get rid of 2 dogs. They would still be able to have 2 dogs there per the zoning code. But they would, animal control would assess the situation as far as, animals on the loose, animals at large, the care of the animals, as well as police would take care of, animals at large as well, vicious animals.
But would it take something like that to trigger that visit? Or would we just deny and then animal control would go out to the house and?
I could probably speak to that. Officer Lincoln is a very diligent officer, and she follows up as soon as an application for a CUP is approved or denied. She follows up with us on a consistent basis until she takes care of the issue.
This is really concerning to me.
Me too.
Me too.
I got kids that go and play in Osborne Park, and I know a lot of kids that go play in Osborne Park. This just, it frightens me. And there's obviously a pattern here. And I'm sorry that you may not be able to keep the 4 dogs. I'm still worried about the 2 dogs that are gonna be there, but that could be a police action or a police issue in the future. But I am not for this at all because of the history and the pattern of these dogs and the incidences that have happened. That's just, no, it's a no-brainer for me.
I think the responsibility falls on us to do what we can.
Absolutely.
And that's what we can do is
gosh.
just deny.
Neighbors should not have to live in their neighborhood in fear and not be allowed to, or be able to use their backyards because they're afraid the dogs are coming through. And if you've got dogs that are 100-plus pounds that are not afraid to jump off the roof, they're not afraid to pretty much go anywhere, I wouldn't think.
Well, and, like everybody says, these are usually pretty easy, and I think this is pretty easy as well.
Yep.
Just because of circumstance.
So I'm also against this, but I just want to throw this out there. Is there any advantage to approving this so we can apply conditions to it, or?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Just throwing that
No,
out.
because if
The
something ever
conditions are
happened,
already there,
Yeah.
and they're not being met. So,
It was one of those deals where if the city didn't have power to do it unless we
You're right.
approved, then that's why I asked the question.
They already have
But
the
if they already have and they're on top of it, then I feel a lot better with a denial because it will get taken care
And I
of.
think it kind of goes even overboard because we're not just talking about a barking nuisance. We're talking about a
of course.
danger.
the
a risk
pictures,
to
the
public.
pictures in here, I
Did
mean,
you see the pictures of the
pictures.
got bit?
So
all right, sorry.
I guess my concern is there still could be 2 vicious dogs there.
Right.
There's nothing we can.
And there's
do about
nothing we
that.
can do about that. We do our part to limit what they can do.
And then animal
Then it
control.
becomes animal control or a police
Correct.
matter.
Who wants to make?
Well, no further discussion, I'll make the
I'll
motion.
make it. I was the one that
All right,
was
go
opposed to
ahead.
this from the beginning.
got
I'll
it.
make it.
You got it.
Let the old guy have it, would you?
No, please, you guys, we can't have outbursts from the gallery, I'm
We don't
sorry.
want we don't need clapping or anything like that. We'll just make the motion.
I move to deny the conditional use permit for a non-commercial kennel license for 4 dogs in a RS6 zoning district at 3346 South Wood River Avenue for Andreas Lastern, whatever, and adopt the potential findings of denial as listed in the staff report.
Do we need to articulate what those findings are, or because they're in the staff report, that's the articulation? Got it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to deny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This, it dies here.
Yeah, you don't.
I don't have to read the thing.
For an appeal process?
He can appeal it, though.
Yeah. You have 15 days to appeal our decision. Do I need to read the thing, Rodney?
No, I think you've covered it with that.
Okay, 15 days, okay. All righty. Okay, our final item tonight is,
Thank you all for coming.
is a development agreement modification for Fuller 84 Business Park. I wonder who's going to come up and talk to us.
Last man standing.
Since he was doing Daniel's work, we might as well approve it now, right?
Working? So you were saying Daniel's gonna present for him then?
Daniel can do
job
his
earlier.
job, and he was doing Daniel's job.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Jeff Bauer, 601 West Bannock in Boise, here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Bow River Capital. Rodney emailed me today and told me not to talk too much, so I'm going to try to keep it short.
You're the reason for the timer, then.
Exactly. So we are here on one application tonight, pretty straightforward. We're asking for a development agreement modification. This is my one slide, and it's merely to kind of refamiliarize the commission with this project. So this is the Fuller 84 project. We were before this commission early 2021 asking for a rezone from GB1 to IP Industrial Park. This commission recommended approval of that rezone with a couple conditions. At issue tonight, those conditions were, I believe it was Commissioner Kehoe said, no truck or bus parking, no petroleum storage, and no manufactured or mobile home park uses allowed. So that recommendation went on to City Council, and the rezone was approved, and a development agreement was recorded. In July or August of this year, I got a call from Parker who said, hey, we're looking at some amendments to the allowed uses in the IP zone, and we want to figure out a way to make sure that those don't affect what we kind of view this as an ongoing grandfathered project. And so what we decided is that we would amend the development agreement to basically include the table of land uses in the code that existed when the project was approved, to sort of fix in time the uses that are allowed in this project. And that's basically all I'm here to ask for tonight. So we aren't asking for any changes to the project. We're really asking for the project to continue on as approved and not be subjected to the new table of allowed uses. And candidly, you know, when we filed this application, we didn't know what those changes would be. Now we do, and they aren't very material, but you know, we had our application in process, and I think it does make a lot of sense for the development to continue on with the uses that were allowed. It is a spec project, so we have users coming in, and I'm happy to answer more questions about those users or the development period, but I'm not necessarily sure they're relevant. And so I'd stand for any questions that you have. Pass it over to Rodney.
All right, we'll hear from Rodney. I don't think we have any questions.
It just seems like the table that you're asking to be added to the development agreement is essentially what would effectively grandfather you in.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kirkman, that's correct. So instead of us being a non-conforming grandfathered use, we would just be allowed. That's right.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, Rodney. Don't talk too much.
Yep.
Practice what you preach.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, the application is before you on the screen. I think we've done a really good job already of describing the situation. There's kind of a little bit of history. Staff recommends approval. We recommended it, that they do this in the first place to just kind of lock in place those uses. There's the specific history that's in your staff report. Here are the land uses. I highlighted the ones that are being removed because of the decision by city council and your recommendation. The one thing that I didn't include in your staff report is a request to lock in place the setbacks. There's really, from a staff perspective, there's not a concern about this because the buildings are already being built. It currently complies with our current standards for setbacks. They're just saying, we just want to make sure that this, in the future, nobody questions that those setbacks.
But what if they were to come back later and want to divide that into separate lots?
Good question. Yeah, there's a lot of room between these buildings. So here are the standards that are currently in our code right now. He's just asking for those to be continued if we made changes.
Okay.
And so I added that as one of the recommended conditions of approval. And then because of that additional dimensional standards, I modified the language a little bit and I tried to simplify it. So if you approve this, I'd recommend that you read what's highlighted in yellow there.
Okay.
So rendering plants will now be allowed in this use, right?
Okay, we'll go to public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to speak for, against, or undecided?
I saw Daniel raise his hand.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, sorry, Jeff, real quick question. So you brought in the whole table, so I think you said this and I just didn't catch it. So you brought in the whole table that's currently allowed. Does that bring back the uses that we didn't allow before?
No.
Where is it? I just didn't see.
He crossed them out. They're marked off.
Okay, just not in this thing that we have. Okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Morgan, I think, so staff and myself will work on a final the final version of the modified development agreement. But currently, the way it reads is the original conditions of approval are still an attachment. I think it's Exhibit C, and it says, thou shalt not do those 4 uses. So it's still in there.
Thou shalt not.
So are there, okay. I'll find, I'm sure it's in there.
It is on page.
And I guess, are there any particular uses you're worried about losing, or I think you kind of mentioned that you don't know?
Well,
It's just,
yeah, it is, Madam Chair, Commissioner Morgan, it is a spec project, so we don't know. But again, when we had this conversation, myself and staff, I think in August of this year, we weren't really sure what the amended land use table would look like or whether the dimensional standards would be touched. So that's kind of why we just
wanted to lock it in.
locked it all in. And again, the changes to the land use table aren't that significant for the uses that we anticipate.
That's what I was wondering, is if you saw something there that you were worried about, but it doesn't sound like it.
Not really, to be candid with you. This isn't by any means comprehensive, but I just tried to kind of eyeball what the changes were. For instance, automobile truck repair is no longer allowed. One that might impact us is equipment sales, large, heavy equipment. That could be something that we end up doing. One difference now, I mean, essentially you try to check off some of the more agricultural, industrial uses, which are things we're not interested in doing, so.
Awesome.
I found it.
After
I'm
he gets
sorry
done
for wasting everybody's time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
Since I bothered everybody with my questions, I moved.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the development agreement modification of ordinance 4582, July 27th, 2021, with all staff recommended conditions presented at the public hearing for the Fuller 84 Business Park addressed on 5350 and 5300 East Franklin Road for Givens Pursley LLP representing RE2 Industrial V LLC and RE2 Industrial V2 LLC. And that's it? There's no, okay, good.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Take my ball and bat and go home.
Goes on to city council. Thank you for being patient with us.
Yeah.